So I'm Angela Beard, as Libby said. I have been at CityU for 6 weeks now. And a little bit about me, a much better photo than when I had no gray hair, but never mind that. I started my career in the arts. I was an interesting path. I was a ballet dancer and I had an injury. And again, back then, they didn't have fabulous laser surgeries and all, so I was done. Instead, I went to work for the company and went into fundraising. And I spent most of my fundraising career in the arts, switching over to social services about 5 years ago when I went to work for Cancer Lifeline as their executive director. In the middle of all that, I decided I wanted to become an executive director. It's funny, I went into fundraising because I wanted to be an ED, and you have to have fundraising, right? And then I love fundraising. Who knew that would happen? So I went to New York City and went to grad school at NYU and started teaching there. So I taught at NYU, came back here, went back to work at Mohai, and then started as an adjunct at Seattle U teaching fundraising in their arts management program. And I worked there for 4 years and in their graduate fundraising certificate, and then budget cuts, etc., brought me to the fabulous opportunity to come here and teach, or not teach, well I guess I am teaching, but help run this Sanford Institute of Philanthropy. What are we going to learn about today? We're going to talk about mission-driven events, right? So our learning objectives are, you can see them here. We're going to have a case study. We talk about ways to assess your event, evaluate if you're meeting your goals, right? Look at who our stakeholders are going to be, develop some strategies for those of you who don't already have them in place, because I know all of us non-profiteers are quite cost conscious, to save some money. And with that being said, let's talk about a little bit about who you are. Could we go around and introduce yourself and where you work and what your role is? I will pick on the young, lovely lady in blue. Hello.
I'm Michaela Pearson. I am on a board. I'm vice president for Key to Change's board, small arts nonprofit, and then I'm also the director of outreach for Noise, Northwest Opera in schools, etc.
Great. Coming up here, Audrey, we met earlier.
Yeah, so I'm Audrey Hubbard. I'm the new development coordinator at the Institute for Systems Biology, and so I'm kind of overall doing some donor engagement. My role is increasing people get involved with us through events and through other things.
I'm Shelley Hinson. I work for Northwest University and director of conference and events. So we work more on like the logistics side of things, but we work really closely with our development and fundraising team as well for our fundraising events.
Great. You guys came from Kirkland.
Yes.
So you're forgiven for being late. Hi.
Hi, I'm Kylie Hale. I also work at Northwest University with Shelley, and I do the project coordinating, so handling details and
Welcome.
whatnot.
Hello.
Hello, my name is Erin Engel. I work for Software's Revolution, a nonprofit that teaches carpentry to teenagers through community projects, and I'm sort of the catch-all development and now event person, so just trying to figure out my role.
Great.
My name is Melanie Mazza. I'm at the Economic Opportunity Institute. I'm a development associate, and we also have a development director who could make it, but we are currently planning our biggest ever event, so that's been a lot what I'm focused on, so excited to absorb some wisdom.
Nice.
My name is Elizabeth Thompson. I work for Community for Youth. It's a mentoring organization. I'm the development and communications specialist.
Damien Sevilla is a good friend.
Oh.
Yeah.
We have our 2019 annual gala coming up.
Is it in January this year? Okay. Got it. End of January?
January 26th.
Okay, great.
I'm Janice DiCucci, the executive director of Community. And we have a meeting today with our event coordinator, so I'm really excited to learn how much.
Great. Welcome. Hi.
I'm membership associate, so I organize a lot of membership events as well as major donor events, and pretty soon I'll also be auction coordinator, and our 30th anniversary is coming up this year, so really want to focus on the big events and specifically. And that's we find it really everything about.
Okay, some busy years coming up for people. Hello.
My name is Christine Laredo. I work at Museum of History and Industry, Ohio. I am the donor events manager. I'm lucky enough to work with a team of 5 for our development team. So I focus mostly on our 2 fundraising events per year and also our donor stewardship events.
You'll have to tell Leonard hello. I was there for 3 years. He'll remember. Hello. Welcome. All right, so we've got quite a range in the crowd. Continuing on that vein, I'm going to write some of this down. What kind of events, all events, not just the ones where we ask for money, does your organization produce? Don't be shy. Shout them out. I know Mohi has, do you still have the dinner at the Four Seasons?
Oh, sorry, Mohi?
Yeah.
Oh, no. That has moved.
That went bye-bye?
Museum.
Okay. Well, of course. Yeah. But you do History Makers, right?
Yeah, History Makers Gala.
So, gala.
We also do a breakfast event.
I know. I created that event. You're welcome.
Happy hours.
Happy hours? Are those fundraisers or? Okay. What else? Don't be shy.
Donor appreciation event.
That's great. Glad to hear about that. Any auctions out there? I think I heard one back in, okay.
We have member and maybe donor briefing.
Okay. I'm just going to put member for time's sake. Cultivation. And Elizabeth.
Private tours and reception.
Mm-hmm.
We have performances for arts.
Yeah. Okay, we're getting quite a list here. And we'll come back to it. For now, we're here to talk about mission-driven events, right? Anyone who wants to know, what rental companies to get your linens from and all, talk to me afterwards because that's the easy part. But making sure your event is mission-driven is what we really want to talk about today. So first of all, what is a mission? Who can shout theirs out? It's okay if you can't. I see some sheepishness in the crowd, and that's okay. That's okay. You guys are doing the hard work of raising the money to support the mission. But what a mission is its purpose. It's nonprofit's purpose, okay? Why do we exist? What need is there in the community that we're going to address through our work, okay? Nonprofit's mission statement establishes its purpose with both passion and conviction. Should be the foundation upon which all plans and decisions are made. And if you're like me, you might wonder, how can I apply this to my events, right? The purpose of our events is to raise money. But there are a number of ways you can do that, and let's go on to talk about some of them. So, each year we have a planning session, right? Or a planning time, a planning period where we think about how we're gonna, the activities for the coming year, the money that we need to raise, how we're going to do that, right? We might consider a new event or reconsider a recurring event, right? Who has that in their organization or participates?
Recurring event?
Yeah. Ones you do year after year after year. And we've got some new events coming up too, right? Sounds like. So what I'm trying to get across to this slide is that rather than just heading into the event saying the board says I have to raise this much money, and I think, you know, they want me to do a party, and okay, I'm going to do it. We might want to think about why we're doing the event, right? And does it support the organization's purpose? So ask yourself, what is the purpose of this event? And if it's to raise money, that's okay, as long as everybody acknowledges that and knows it. But it can serve the greater purpose of supporting your mission as well. And we've got a really awesome TED Talk that takes some time, about 17 minutes, but I think will help show you guys how we get to the core of this, all right? So let me get that going. This guy is Simon. Is it Cynic, Libby, or Cynic? And he's going to talk about leadership and the why.
When things don't go as we assume, or better, how do you explain when others are able to achieve things that seem to defy all of the assumptions? For example, why is Apple so innovative? Year after year after year after year, they're more innovative than all their competition. And yet they're just a computer company. They're just like everyone else. They have the same access to the same talent, the same agencies, the same consultants, the same media. Then why is it that they seem to have something different? Why is it that Martin Luther King led the civil rights movement? He wasn't the only man who suffered in a pre-civil rights America, and he certainly wasn't the only great orator of the day. Why him? And why is it that the Wright brothers were able to figure out controlled powered man flight when there were certainly other teams who were better qualified, better funded, and they didn't achieve powered man flight, and the Wright brothers beat them to it? There's something else at play here. About 3.5 years ago, I made a discovery, and this discovery profoundly changed my view on how I thought the world worked, and it even profoundly changed the way in which I operate in it. As it turns out, there's a pattern. As it turns out, all the great and inspiring leaders and organizations in the world, whether it's Apple or Martin Luther King or the Wright brothers, they all think, act, and communicate the exact same way, and it's the complete opposite to everyone else. All I did was codify it. And it's probably the world's simplest idea. I call it the golden circle. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do, 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? And why should anyone care? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done, that's how most sales is done, and that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do, we say how we're different or how we're better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. but it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You're ready to buy a computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. What it proves to us is that people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat-screen TVs. They're eminently qualified to make flat-screen TVs. They've been making flat-screen monitors for years. Nobody bought one. Dell came out with MP3 players and PDAs. And they make great quality products, and they can make perfectly well-designed products. And nobody bought one. In fact, talking about it now, we can't even imagine buying an MP3 player from Dell. Why would you buy an MP3 player from a computer company? But we do it every day. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. The goal is not to do business with everybody who needs what you have. The goal is to do business with people who believe what you believe. Here's the best part. None of what I'm telling you is my opinion. It's all grounded in the tenets of biology, not psychology, biology. If you look at a cross-section of the human brain, looking from the top down, what you see is the human brain is actually broken into three major components that correlate perfectly with the golden circle. Our newest brain, our Homo sapien brain, our neocortex, corresponds with the what level. The neocortex is responsible for all of our rational and analytical thought and language. The middle two sections make up our limbic brains, and our limbic brains are responsible for all of our feelings, like trust and loyalty. It's also responsible for all human behavior, all decision-making, and it has no capacity for language. In other words, when we communicate from the outside in, yes, people can understand vast amounts of complicated information like features and benefits and facts and figures. It just doesn't drive behavior. When we communicate from the inside out, we're talking directly to the part of the brain that controls behavior, and then we allow people to rationalize it with the tangible things we say and do. This is where gut decisions come from. You know, sometimes you can give somebody all the facts and your figures, and they say, I know what all the facts and details say, but it just doesn't feel right. Why would we use that verb? It doesn't feel right. Because the part of the brain that controls decision-making doesn't control language, and the best we can muster up is, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. Or sometimes you say you're leading with your heart, or you're leading with your soul. Well, I hate to break it to you, those aren't the other body parts controlling your behavior. It's all happening here in your limbic brain, the part of the brain that controls decision-making and not language. But if you don't know why you do what you do, and people respond to why you do what you do, then how will you ever get people to vote for you or buy something from you, or more importantly, be loyal and want to be a part of what it is that you do? Again, the goal is not just to sell people who need what you have. The goal is to sell to people who believe what you believe. The goal is not just to hire people who need a job. It's to hire people who believe what you believe. I always say that, you know, if you hire people just because they can do a job, they'll work for your money. But if you hire people who believe what you believe, they work for you with blood and sweat and tears. And nowhere else is there a better example of this than with the Wright brothers. Most people don't know about Samuel Pierpont Langley. And back in the early 20th century, the pursuit of powered man flight was like the dot-com of the day. Everybody was trying it. And Samuel Pierpont Langley had what we assume to be the recipe for success. I mean, even now, when you ask people, why did your product or why did your company fail? And people always give you the same permutation of the same three things. Undercapitalized, the wrong people, bad market conditions. It's always the same three things. So let's explore that. Samuel Pierpont Langley was given $50,000 by the War Department to figure out this flying machine. Money was no problem. He held a seat at Harvard and worked at the Smithsonian and was extremely well connected. He knew all the big minds of the day. He hired the best minds money could find, and the market conditions were fantastic. The New York Times followed him around everywhere, and everyone was rooting for Langley. And how come we've never heard of Samuel Pierpont Langley? A few hundred miles away in Dayton, Ohio, Orville and Wilbur Wright. They had none of what we consider to be the recipe for success. They had no money. They paid for their dream with the proceeds from their bicycle shop. Not a single person on the Wright brothers' team had a college education, not even Orville or Wilbur. And the New York Times followed them around nowhere. The difference was Orville and Wilbur were driven by a cause, by a purpose, by a belief. They believed that if they could figure out this flying machine, it'll change the course of the world. Samuel Pierpont Langley was different. He wanted to be rich, and he wanted to be famous. He was in pursuit of the result. He was in pursuit of the riches. And lo and behold, look what happened. The people who believed in the Wright brothers' dream worked with them with blood and sweat and tears. The others just worked for the paycheck. And they tell stories of how every time the Wright brothers went out, they would have to take 5 sets of parts because that's how many times they would crash before they came in for supper. And eventually, on December 17th, 1903, the Wright brothers took flight. And no one was there to even experience it. We found out about it a few days later. And further proof that Langley was motivated by the wrong thing, the day the Wright brothers took flight, he quit. He could have said, "That's an amazing discovery, guys, now we'll improve upon your technology." But he didn't. He wasn't first, he didn't get rich, he didn't get famous, so he quit. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And if you talk about what you believe, you will attract those who believe what you believe. Well, why is it important to attract those who believe what you believe? Something called the law of diffusion of innovation. And if you don't know the law, you definitely know the terminology. The first 2.5% of our population are our innovators. The next 13.5% of our population are our early adopters. The next 34% are your early majority, your late majority, and your laggards. The only reason these people buy touch-tone phones is because you can't buy rotary phones anymore. We all sit at various places at various times on the scale, but what the law of diffusion of innovation tells us is that if you want mass market success or mass market acceptance of an idea, you cannot have it until you achieve this tipping point between 15 and 18% market penetration, and then the system tips. And I love asking businesses, what's your conversion on new business? And they love to tell you, oh, it's about 10%, proudly. Well, you can trip over 10% of the customers. We all have about 10% who just get it. That's how we describe them, right? That's like that gut feeling, oh, they just get it. The problem is, how do you find the ones that just get it before you're doing business with them versus the ones who don't get it? So it's this here, this little gap, that you have to close, as Jeffrey Moore calls it, crossing the chasm. Because you see, the early majority will not try something until someone else has tried it first. And these guys, the innovators and the early adopters, they're comfortable making those gut decisions. They're more comfortable making those intuitive decisions that are driven by what they believe about the world and not just what product is available. These are the people who stood online for 6 hours to buy an iPhone when they first came out, when you could have just walked into the store the next week and bought one off the shelf. These are the people who spent $40,000 on flat screen TVs when they first came out, even though the technology was substandard. And by the way, they didn't do it because the technology was so great. They did it for themselves. It's because they wanted to be first. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And what you do simply proves what you believe. In fact, people will do the things that prove what they believe. The reason that person bought the iPhone in the first 6 hours, or stood in line for 6 hours, was because of what they believed about the world and how they wanted everybody to see them. They were first. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So let me give you a famous example, a famous failure and a famous success of the law of diffusion of innovation. First, the famous failure. It's a commercial example. As we said before a second ago, the recipe for success is money and the right people and the right marketing conditions, right? You should have success then. Look at TiVo. From the time TiVo came out about 8 or 9 years ago to this current day, they are the single highest quality product on the market, Hands down, there is no dispute. They were extremely well funded. Market conditions were fantastic. I mean, we use TiVo as a verb. I TiVo stuff on my piece of junk Time Warner DDR all the time. But TiVo's a commercial failure. They've never made money. And when they went IPO, their stock was at about $30 or $40 and plummeted, and it's never traded above 10. In fact, I don't think it's even traded above 6, except for a couple of little spikes. Because you see, when TiVo launched their product, they told us all what they had. They said, we have a product that pauses live TV, skips commercials, rewinds live TV, and memorizes your viewing habits without you even asking. And the cynical majority said, we don't believe you, we don't need it, we don't like it, you're scaring us. What if they had said, if you're the kind of person who likes to have total control over every aspect of your life, boy, do we have a product for you. It pauses live TV, skips commercials, memorizes your viewing habits, etc., etc. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, and what you do simply serves as the proof of what you believe. Now let me give you a successful example of the law of diffusion of innovation. In the summer of 1963, 250,000 people showed up on the Mall in Washington to hear Dr. King speak. They sent out no invitations, and there was no website to check the date. How do you do that? Well, Dr. King wasn't the only man in America who was a great orator. He wasn't the only man in America who suffered in a pre-civil rights America. In fact, some of his ideas were bad, but he had a gift. He didn't go around telling people what needed to change in America. He went around and told people what he believed. I believe, I believe, I believe, he told people. And people who believed what he believed took his cause and they made it their own, and they told people. And some of those people created structures to get the word out to even more people. And lo and behold, 250,000 people showed up on the right day, on the right time to hear him speak. How many of them showed up for him? 0. They showed up for themselves. It's what they believed about America that got them to travel on a bus for 8 hours to stand in the sun in Washington in the middle of August. It's what they believed, and it wasn't about black versus white. 25% of the audience was white. Dr. King believed that there are 2 types of laws in this world, those that are made by a higher authority and those that are made by man. And not until all the laws that are made by man are consistent with the laws that are made by the higher authority will we live in a just world. It just so happens that the civil rights movement was the perfect thing to help him bring his cause to life. We followed not for him, but for ourselves. And by the way, he gave the I have a dream speech, not the I have a plan speech. Listen to politicians now with their comprehensive 12-point plans. They're not inspiring anybody. Because there are leaders and there are those who lead. Leaders hold a position of power or authority, but those who lead inspire us. Whether they're individuals or organizations, we follow those who lead, not because we have to, but because we want to. We follow those who lead, not for them, but for ourselves. And it's those who start with why that have the ability to inspire those around them or find others who inspire them. Thank you very much.
Okay, so why did I show you guys this?
We enter and leave this world needing care.
Yeah.
It's a universal part of being human.
Come on.
Maybe because it's so universal.
How is this relevant to events? Why did I make you watch it? People don't buy what you do, they buy what you believe. What does Mohai believe? Okay. What does Community for Youth believe?
That caring adult and a strong community will help students be successful in school and life.
Okay. Northwest College. What do they believe?
We believe in quality education with Christ at the center.
All right, so you guys are telling me essentially the whys of why you're putting on an event. Who buys it? Who's not quite sure? Come on, people. Give me some love here. I was thinking about this last night when I was cramming for this, and I thought it might be helpful. Often when I teach, I find that instead of presenting our participants with answers, sometimes the questions are the best thing to leave them with. So when I came up with an example of a question to help us think about the why for our events. And the example is one of my favorite nonprofits, Youth Care. Who knows Youth Care? You guys must. Youth Care is an organization in Seattle that provides housing and support to homeless youth, and also, well, I'll just read it out, works to end youth homelessness and to ensure that young people are valued for who they are and empowered to achieve their potential. Youth Care has an annual luncheon. It's over at the Westin, not the Sheraton, and more than 1,000 people come every year. Raises a lot of money. Yes, it's true. But I've been many years now because a friend of mine puts together a table, and the most striking thing about this luncheon is how that it supports their mission. I shouldn't even say in addition to, as a goal for the event. Anyone been to it? Okay, and you mind if I pick on you a little? And
No, I was hired to run it last year.
oh my goodness, well then.
It's a great event.
But some of the elements in place, and you're obviously more qualified even than I to address this, that really speak to how they support you homeless youth are, first of all, and I've never gotten over this. I still am astounded when I go every year. You're in the Westin, you know you're gonna write a check, most likely, you know, with hopefully at least 3 figures. And lunch comes, and what is it? It's a brown paper bag with the chips and an apple and some kind of sandwich. Any ideas on why that might be?
Makes you think of school, going to, being something your mom packed you, or
That's probably part of it, yes. Any more thoughts? How much does it cost to serve chicken or salmon, rice pilaf, etc.? How much? What is it these days? 40 bucks a person, right? Okay. What do homeless youth have to eat? If they're lucky, right? So they use that simple choice of catering, I guess you can call it catering, yeah, to reinforce the fact that they are out there supporting youth homelessness. What else do they do? Their clients and former clients speak. And I believe, again, help me out here, that several of them have been hired by the agency and are in the house and speak to the guests and circulate and talk about their experiences. They have cards on the table that tell the story of some of their clients. It's in the program. Of course, their ED talks about it, and usually 2 or 3 clients are asked to share their story about how homelessness affected them and how Youth Care got them out of that and where they are today. It's absolutely fabulous. And that, in my opinion, is a great example, and I'm so glad you're here today, of a mission-driven event. Any questions on that? On asking yourself a question about what your agency believes, about how your event can support it? We'll go on to more, but I'm hoping you guys, your little neurons are firing, right? So when you are considering whether or not an event's going to support your mission, there's going to be a yes and there's going to be a no. If the answer is no, what do? We may decide to leave it. And if the answer is yes, then we have to move on to going to plan, right? So the first step we're going to do is set some goals. What are some possible event goals? Shout them out at me. I'm going to do the easy one, raise money, right? We need to bring in money to do our good work so that our clients, our environment, whatever it is that we believe needs to change, can in fact do so. Pardon me. But what are some other objectives? Attendance and engagement of who? Whom, excuse me.
I guess it'd be a way to deepen relationship with existing donors as well as those new to the organization. If they're new, what kind of goal might that bring into play? Education. We want to educate people about what it is we do, right? And coming back to some of these that you guys listed, the briefings and the happy hours and the private tours are all about, are they about asking for money? No. What are they about? Education, engagement, right? What are we selling? Are we selling what we do or what we believe? Right, you know the right answer, of course, but hopefully when you're meeting with people who are new to your organization or hosting them at some kind of event, that's what you're selling them, right? Okay, so next, after we've set our goals, we're going to perform a SWOT analysis. And I have a handout for you all that's next. Who's done a SWOT before? See a few hands. Okay, what is it? Start out as a marketing tool where you analyze the internal and external environments for your particular project, organization, initiative, and figure out in advance what you have to support your ideas and what might be barriers to them being completed. So, going through it really quickly. Internal origin are strengths. Strengths of, in this case, we're talking about an event, right? And we'll move on to a case study next. But if you're deciding, okay, who's doing the new gala? Somebody was just on the cusp of one, right? Okay. It's bigger. Okay. So what are some of the strengths that you think are in place for your event that enabled you to make the decision to enlarge it?
Well, we have a really strong existing donor base.
Okay.
It's our 1-year anniversary, so we've been doing a lot of work to kind of re-engage people that have been engaged all along. So we're starting with a really strong foundation of people who do attend every year and who just try to bring more of their colleagues.
That's always a strength, right? Weaknesses?
It's in a new venue, and there's just a lot of the way that we've done it year after year is very different this year. So there's kind of some growing pains.
Okay, great. And strengths and weaknesses, again, are generally internal. And that's a good and a bad thing because internal factors are something you may be able to change, right? Opportunities and threats come from the outside, all right? And those are, again, potential opportunities or barriers to the success of your event. What might some of those be?
Well, we have our event in January, so there's always the threat of bad weather.
Right? Weather. Competing events.
People have already spent their money on
Pe-
philanthropy for the year.
People have spent their money on philanthropy. Yes, that's true. I mean, some of them are even more, well, we're events people, so we are in the weeds, right? Cost of postage goes up, right? You can't do anything about it, but if you send out a lot of invitations in the mail, people still do that. You know, it's going to be a threat. When the state privatized liquor sales, the taxes went up, right? Same thing. A lot of stuff you can't control. So I'm going to ask you to go ahead. Oh, we'll go through the case study first. So I started my career at Pacific Northwest Ballet, as you know, and we did a big event in, I'm not going to tell you the year because it gives too much away, in honor of a brand new production of Cinderella. We were producing, it was new to the company. We brought in Martin Pacadinas, who's a really well-known designer, to create all the sets and costumes and production elements. And we had just finished a $13 million capital campaign for our studio and administrative space over on Mercer, right next to McCaw. So we were riding high. We'd finished it in record time and not had to borrow to complete the building. We had just accumulated a huge donor base, well, a huge potential donor base with the capital campaign donors. And it seemed to make sense for the following reasons again. So the why, I put this side by side. We set our goals, and I put the mission over here to kind of see what you guys think if we were actually hitting the why. So why we wanted to do this event was we wanted to place and engage some community members on the event committee with an eye towards engaging them in our future activities. We wanted to educate constituents about the new production, right? You know, ballet is kind of unique in that the gala type things that are actually appealing to our constituency. So we wanted to show them production values, the costumes, the sets, all that kind of thing. We wanted to use the event marketing to get people excited and get a buzz going about the production. And then we wanted to fully fund the cost of the production because it was built from the ground up and it wasn't cheap, right? So here's PNB's mission. Set new standards for artistic excellence, innovation, and creativity. Attract the most talented dancers, choreographers, musicians, collaborative artists, staff, and volunteers. Educate and develop dance artists as well as enthusiasts. Now here's where we get to the why, right? Captivate a devoted, supportive, continually growing and diverse audience. Strengthen our financial and organizational foundation. Can you guys see the connection between the why of doing a Cinderella ball, which at first glance might seem kind of frivolous, and how it actually does connect to the why of what the company believes, why we exist? Feel free to call me on it if you'd like, you know, because nothing's clear-cut perfect. Yeah, we wanted to raise money. We wanted to fund the production, but we also really wanted to use that as a vehicle to bring people into the organization, to get them excited about it and inspired. So the SWOT analysis, the ball gala obviously tied into the Cinderella story and what they were going to be seeing on stage. Marty Pakladinas was very well known. He was, you know, rock star designer at the time, and people were very excited to have him. We were able to capitalize on production elements and themes, so we were able to bring in costumes and sets and props, and dancers were attending and getting the guests excited about the production, right? And then it was the novel, kind of what you're talking about. It was a new event, brand new, one time only. We usually did Nutcracker Ball, but this 1 year only, we decided to do Cinderella Ball in our new venue because there was a huge studio that we could decorate and do it in at a different time of year. It was in March as opposed to December. So those are the strengths and opportunities. Weaknesses and threats. We had just completed a capital campaign, so we were worried about donor fatigue. They'd had enough of us for a while, right? It was a departure from the Nutcracker Ball, which was hugely popular. The ball was in March and the production opened in June. Well, you performing arts people who know, right, that the wardrobe people often are standing in the wings sewing people into their costumes on opening night because that's the way things go. And we were worried that there wouldn't be enough of the production elements to use at the ball. And then the new date might conflict with other events around the region. So we looked at all that and figured out ways to solve it, etc. What happened? Well, we got 2 new board members from the committee. Performances sold out and we had to extend the run, and the production was fully funded. So we did meet goals in addition to the bottom line. Okay?
Connect the sales or tickets with that event somehow, or was it more just like an awareness and then they went home and did it on their own?
They went home and did it on their own. Yeah. It was a high ticket price. Was appealing to our board and their friends, essentially. So is this helping you guys to think about how the why of what your organization does can be tied to events? Why don't you take a look at this handout that I just passed out. And think of an event in your own organization. Many of you have named them already. And what a SWOT for that event might be, and some goals. Go ahead and write them down, and we will come together and chat about them in 5-7 minutes. All right, switching gears a little bit. Now that we've thought about the whys and the opportunities, threats, barriers, things that could help us or hurt us, who needs to be involved in all of this? Who are our stakeholders? A little bit of a cheat list there. But as you can see, donors, volunteer staff, we go on down through some other type of donors, sponsors, etc. Prospects, strategic partners, depending on the type of event, right? Why does this matter? Why do we need to think about who our stakeholders are? Staff does most of the work, unless, you know, if you have a committee, they're pulling pretty hard behind you too, right? What are your thoughts?
I want to meet people where they are as
Meet people where they are as guests during the planning process. What do you think?
At least, I guess I was considering when they're there. So if you have too much focus on education about your programs, then maybe the folks that are your diehard supporters are going to be kind of bored by that event.
What do you think? I agree. I'm doing of course, because no matter where I get paid to work, I'm always doing pro bono fundraising, as I'm sure are many of you. I'm helping a board member who's a friend with an event next week. And we've invited both, because they work in South Africa and the students that they support and the executive director are in town very frequently, we've invited both prospects and donors, so we're thanking and asking all at the same time. And it's difficult, right? It can be a real challenge. So knowing who's in the room, meeting them where they're at is a great thing to think about ahead of time before you go home afterwards and say, oh no, half our crowd was really bored, right?
It helps you tailor your message of how people can engage with your why if you know who you're trying to engage with your why.
Right? Right? Everyone agree? I think so too. Who are some other, did I miss anyone? Thinking about the types of events that we do. Organization members are our clients. That's just in case that terminology isn't clear. The people that we work with, yeah.
What about elected officials?
Yeah. Elected officials, I know that, yes. Elizabeth. Yes, yes.
I have a founder at my event.
Uh-huh. The founder, who we hope is the donor, but never mind, that's all.
Is making a major donor.
Yeah. Yes. You had a hand up over here? Or were you stretching?
Me?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, stretching. All right. So we've thought through some of our potential stakeholders. Now you guys are going to have another turn at this, and take a minute to think through the event that you're using for your example and who those stakeholders are. Just take a few minutes to jot those down and continue your lunch. So now we come to the how. And you're hearing a bunch of great event ideas here today. I don't even know if I need this slide, because it sounds like a lot of you are doing these things already, or you've heard enough from the people who are today, but let's just quickly zip over them. Invitations and save the day. There's a lot of talk right now, I'm going to back up just a little, about storytelling in nonprofits, right? You're all seeing the webinars, you're all seeing the trainings, people are encouraging you to tell stories. How do we do that through a save the date? You brought it up, so now I get to pick on you. What are you guys doing with your save the date that your students recommended, or that tells about Community for Youth mission?
I don't know if the actual save date says anything about the mission.
Mm-hmm.
The students helped with like the design of it.
Mm-hmm.
Bob is your mission, then. That's good.
So I'm going to keep pushing you a little bit.
Yeah.
On your save the date, is there an image?
Yeah, it's not connected to the missions. I think what we're going to do is we're going to have a save the date card, but then it's kind of like our graphic
Mhm.
representation of
Mhm.
the event, but
but then we're going to have an email that has the graphic, and
Mhm.
then with pictures of our students.
Right.
And mentors.
Okay,
and then-
so that's where I was going. If you're going to use graphics and images, you probably aren't going to use a picture of an orchid or, you know, a horse or a chicken, right? You're going to find images that are or represent your clients, right? Program insert. What can we use that for? This is something that I've actually clashed with executive directors about. So I'm really, probably because I overreact a little, I'm like, we will have this. But what do you guys have in your programs? Talk to me.
Future events, so you can take it out, put it on my screen.
Future events, what do you think? Well, at many events, when you sit down, there's a program, piece of paper with what you're going to eat and, you know, who the committee was, and it can be just about anything you like, which is why we're talking about it, right? And on my program insert or printed program, I absolutely insist, of course, on having the mission, but also what the gift will support.
The numbers.
Yeah, so it's not just please give us $300. It's your $300 pays for 6 weeks for one of our youth to live in our shelter, which is probably way off, but for the purposes of discussion, right? Or stories. Thanks to your $300, blah, lovely student X, lovely client X will get to enjoy 6 weeks off the streets. I really love the youth care folks. I do. I keep using that example. Sorry about that. So use those collaterals to talk about your mission. And the clash I have is, you know, the executive director wants to list the board. And yeah, that's important. We love our board. We love our committee. But people aren't there because they want to know who's on the board. They're there because they want to hear how their gift is going to help support the mission and the clients. Okay. Social media. If y'all have social media, how are you using it for events? And saying not at all is okay, because most of us are one person in a 8-hat shop, right? What are some ways we could use social media for our events?
Last year we used it to generate excitement about some of the items that
Mhm.
were going to be featured in the auction.
Okay.
And also as a way to
Thank the donors, show items that are being, and you could do them both at once, I assume, right? Our fabulous donor gave us this trip to Mexico. We love our donor, and you want to come and buy this trip, because when you do, you will,
provide.
yeah, you will have a workshop for our students, you know, or rent a room for our mentors to hang out in with our students. I don't know exactly what that's going to be, right? But so, social media. Might we tell stories on our social media as well? If you come to our wonderful auction, you're going to get to hear Sam Smith's story. And Sam Smith started in a, you know, not such a favorable situation, but worked with a mentor and now is doing Z. And you want to hear this kid because he's awesome, and come to our dinner in January, right? Is this clicking with you guys, or is this all stuff that you're like, yeah, right, but I only have 24 hours in a day and I need 28? Is that what you're thinking?
No, I'm actually thinking, so when you were talking about the program insert and, you know, also partly for social media, there's a lot of different constituents that they, like, for social media, there's a lot of different constituents that they target. Like for something like the program insert,
Mhm.
it seems to also be a balance of how do I keep my costs reasonable for all the information I
Right.
want for folks to have. Yes, I do want to have
Right.
information about our mission. I also want to tell our audience this is what you're having, you know. things like
Right,
that.
right. I hear you. And insert probably was a bad choice, because that implies an extra piece that you got to pay for and get stuffed in there. So let's call that, you know, a program page.
For our event, we didn't have anything on the table. It was also kind of, this is last year, so
Mhm.
following this year's on that for like our winter fundraiser basically. And something like if you needed to put similar stuff that you might have on a program insert could be on rotation on a slideshow.
Well, that I was just thinking about that. If you're already paying to show slides, put this is what your $300 will fund on a PowerPoint slide that's looping and that you already paid for, right? What do you think about that, Elizabeth?
It's like a seated event like a dinner or something, if you're a centerpiece or something else, and then people function as a mechanism for sharing information.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, where was I? I think it was the Abused Deaf Women's Network where they had a jar as their centerpiece, and it was a thank you from the clients. Each one of them wrote out on a little slip of paper how the Deaf Women's Network had helped them and put it in, and we got to go through them and read them through the evening. Yeah, it was really a great idea. Steal away, that's why you're here. Live testimonials, we've kind of talked about. Event logistics, when I say that, I'm talking about the youth care brown bag meal. It's often even a way to get into the food, the colors, the simple details of the events, things about your mission, the centerpieces, right? Be creative, and often you can save a little cash too, right? A mason jar with quotes, it probably was labor intensive, but if you have volunteers and you're looking to save some money, snap that idea up. Event video, yes.
I was just going to ask, we're not a client-based organization, so doing all of the story, finding a balance for that for us is tricky. I'm wondering if you think your experiences have any ways that these can be adapted for that, or
I guess, well, the first thing I would do is come back. Maybe you don't have human clients. Okay. I'm sorry, what is your work again?
We're a public policy think tank.
Okay.
So everyone's kind of our client. They just
okay. So when I think about a video or talking about the impact of what we do, the first thing is, what is our impact? And what is yours?
We pass progressive public policies that support economically vulnerable.
That's what you do. Sorry, I'm not picking on you. That's what you do, but what's the impact? When that legislation passes.
To make the economy more equitable.
And keep talking, so people get housing, or they get, what's the outcome?
The outcome is that everyone kind of has a shot at getting some steady footing.
Right, there you go. And that results in?
A more equitable Washington state.
Right, and one can see this because people aren't homeless, people can afford childcare. What's the?
I don't know.
That's something maybe.
Done fixing the economy.
No, I understand that, and I'm picking on you because I know that you're going to be awesome once you've continued to think this through. But this is what happens when our legislation succeeds, or when our advocacy succeeds, would be a great place to start with your video, and it could be as easy as some B-roll of the legislation in session, or a meeting, or something that looks boring, but with a voiceover saying, because of our efforts, these meetings resulted in more economic equity. And then you could go over to just plain old generic photos or numbers of, what that looks like. Yeah, there you go.
Trying to track them down.
Yeah.
Finding those people and having them tell.
Yeah.
They may not necessarily know that DOI did that, but
Right.
this
Yeah.
policy, the minimum wage going up to $15 an hour, basically helped me do this.
Right.
Right.
Compared to what it was.
Right, and and then you can just use generic images or footage of people who might be working for $15 an hour, and not, sleeping on a couch, and you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But in their own home, and anyhow. Yeah. Does that help?
It does, yeah.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah, just to add, so the tie is, so if I know somebody's working on public policy, that's pretty abstract. This person being able to afford daycare for their kids, so it's almost like doing that, this arrow to this arrow
Right.
to this arrow. So that when I think about your organization, I think about them, not necessarily that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'll just have to go through a few more iterations, and then the people who do direct service. But yeah, it's eminently doable. Yeah. Thank you notes. Everyone does them, right? Please say yes.
To the attendants or?
To the attendees. Okay. What are some ways to throw your mission into thank you notes? I've got one for you. Seattle Youth Symphony, where I worked, we had the student musicians, especially those on scholarship, write thank yous to the donors after the event. They loved that. What else?
Many of you have seen, because it really has struck me, Fred Hutch has done these commercials where a woman is, or someone is reading a letter, a thank you letter from someone whose cancer has been, whatever, a grateful patient. And then at the end of it, that grateful, you've probably seen this, right? The grateful patient steps forward and says, hi, and they're like, they've gone from the letter from the person to actually meeting the person. So any of those grateful, that's always respectful of who's, there's always freedom to not necessarily be a part of the thank you. But that one is really like, okay,
yeah.
It really worked, really helped. This is person.
There's that if you have to be a little bit more, low tech or low effort isn't what I'm looking for, but if your bandwidth isn't at an all-time high, we did a great thank you that people loved at Cancer Lifeline after our luncheon, which was we raised $180,000 and we just did an infographic. Because of this, we're going to be able to offer this many classes and give away this many grants to low-income cancer patients. And we had it sort of set up in advance and then just had to fill in the numbers, right? And then bam, went out that very day. You guys have seen them because you've all been to these things, right? But do you all have access to some of the email services, the MailChimps and the Constant Contacts? Use them? There's another idea. Avoiding poverty porn, I had to put this in because I know it's come up a lot when I teach about events. Everybody know what poverty porn is? It's where poverty porn is where we really exploit through images and stories the kind of hopelessness and the lack of dignity and humanity that we're actually trying to change. I'll use the animal example, the ones in the holidays where the poor animals are in the snow and shivering in cages and stuff. That's animal poverty porn, right? We want to focus on, there are a couple of ways to, there's a link to the article that I got when I was researching this. Rather than emphasizing the hopelessness of the situation when you're communicating about your clients, if that's an issue for you, we want to look at independence, the shared values that you have. Remember, we're trying to sell the donor on what we believe, right? So we have some reason to think that they have the same beliefs as we do. So what are our shared values? We all care about, kids being fed and cancer being cured and art being available to people to inspire them and education, whatever. What are our shared values? How can we work together to make sure this happens? And what's our progress been towards alleviating suffering, towards curing cancer, whatever the need is that we're trying to attack. And like I said, there's a link to the full article, which is actually very good in the PowerPoint, which you guys have printed. So I will try to send it out to you later today if you're interested. Any other examples or ideas of how we can get the mission in to the how of our event that we haven't covered? Yes?
venue itself having meaning to the communities we're serving. But things that we just never thought about because we're like, either we found the cheapest, or we've always used this person, or whatever. But if you think about, the videographer, that actually really the printer you're using, every element. Do those people share the same values that your organization shares?
Yeah. Excellent point, right? Okay, moving on. So now you have 12 minutes to do your own event plan. I'm going to hand out this worksheet, but I fear we won't get through it all in time, so why don't we just give you this for future reference. And it really kind of summarizes everything we've talked about, the why, the how, and the what, right? The what is the easy part. You guys are professionals. Like I said, if you do really need some guidance on where you go for rentals and good caterers and all that kind of thing, come talk to me. I'm happy to help you with that. But I think we're looking at a higher level. We're trying to get deeper into what's behind our events. And feel free to use this planning worksheet to do that for yourself. I did promise to get you out of here on time. Some ways to save. Stop doing events that aren't successful, number one, right? Yeah, I mean, it's kind of awe-inspiring in a chilling way to hear stories on how many organizations continue to do events just because it's the way it's always been, because there's a powerful champion behind an event, even if it's failing. So sometimes hard decisions have to be made. And those are political and a little bit beyond the scope, but for what you have to say about it, if it's not meeting the goals that you set, goodbye, right? Office expenses, do I need to go into that? I'm sure you guys are, you know, careful as you possibly can be about that. Charging event admission. This is another one that could generate a lot of conversation because event admission automatically sets up barriers for some people to attend, right? What's the positive side of it, though? It's revenue. It helps you cover your costs. It helps you to kind of control, if you will. If people bought a ticket, well, then you know they're coming. You'll have enough food for them. The logistics fall into place, right? Something to think about. Volunteers. Is anybody in here not maximizing their volunteer use? Need some tips on that? Look for the people who have the experience you need. Printers, designers, caterers, if you're lucky enough to have that fall from the sky, right? Again, strategic partnerships where you can get some in-kind donations or people to help you that care about your mission. I just got an email that Tom Douglas joined the the Food Lifeline. It is Food Lifeline, not First Harvest. Food Lifeline board. I'm like, they're set. They're never going to pay another catering bill for as long as he's on that board, right? Sponsorships, underwriting, in-kind donations, and what else can you do? Any ideas? What am I missing? Yeah.
So last year we sent out paper invitations, and so I'm just wondering if that's still a thing or not.
You know, from my own experience, and I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this, because every organization I've worked at, we've had this debate. Nobody wants to do paper invitations, but everywhere I've been, either the audience is at an age that they don't use email and respond to it, or unfortunately the development data is not in good enough shape that there are a sufficient number of emails and contact information to use to do electronic. So it's a goal that I think people are working for, but let's hear what you all are doing.
I actually work for an organization that makes a transition from paper remit to electronic remit, and that was a nice bridge to actually help us gather people's email addresses so we could then make a transition to further eliminating paper as a form of communication. That, you know, never really went away, but there were a couple of years of monitoring, like what percentage of registration was coming in online versus via paper remit, and then there at some point we pulled the trigger, but we also had we had to plan for a system in place so that whatever electronic registrations we were doing, we were capturing the information we needed to capture.
Yeah. And sometimes it's even a mission question. At Cancer Lifeline, most cancer patients are over 54. So not only is it costing us more money to communicate with them, but also that's who we serve. We don't serve the, 22-year-olds who are doing the Twitter and the Snapchat and all that. We serve the older people that aren't as hip to that. Yeah.
Yeah, we decided for our
stick it somewhere, share a quick hand, you can hand us something we did. That'll be the only paper collateral, and then it will be a digital invitation and digital follow-up. Kind of what you said, incorporating the image from the front of that, but adding on to it, building from it. Because we just, everyone we talk to, all the stakeholders are like, something print. So we found a good compromise, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, checking in with your stakeholders, even about questions like this. Libby.
Well, so the thing that always interests me is the decision to do that, like you just said, has a lot to do with who are your donors now. And the average donor in this country is a 69-year-old woman. She's still like,
You're 40, Libby, remember?
I'm getting there, yeah, 40, right? So that sense of, you know, they're still writing checks, they're still dealing in mail and things like that. But that may not be who is giving, you know, necessarily to your group. So I think any transitional things will, you know, can help. But the neat thing is, it's a good way to find out by actually a postcard, or if you think an email will work, say, hey, we're trying to find out how we should send out invitations. And it gives you a chance to make another touch to a donor and ask them, what do you want? Now, you might not get a great response, but you get a reason to contact them that isn't about asking them for money.
Right.
And so anything you can do to pull them into being interested
Yeah.
into the organization. So, you know, you might just kind of have some volunteers randomly call 50 donors. Now, obviously 10 of them will answer the phone, and 10 of them will listen to the message maybe, and the other ones won't. But this idea like, gee, we'd love to have your opinion about this.
Right.
What do you think we should do? Then I feel special.
Right.
You asked me.
And you have to meet them where they are. That was one of the best things that's been said today. You have to meet them where they are. One of the auctions I did for a nonprofit that shall remain nameless only had online registration. I was like, are you insane? Our donors are, again, older people. Well, they're just going to have to learn it and get used to it. I'm like, okay, and what if they don't and this auction fails? Right? You've got to meet them where they are. Even if it goes against your hip technological, I'm with y'all on this too, right? Yeah.
I have a question for the group. Is anybody doing ticketed or admission? So, and then there will be an additional ask at the program, right? That's kind of where I'm trying to figure out right now. It's like making my, basically we're going to go through online ticketing, old type tickets, whatever, and is it tasteful to like include, there will be an ask, or there will be like this ticket purchase is already basically going towards the cause. There will be an opportunity to give at whatever level you spend. Like that's something that's appropriate to have on your ticketing system. Yeah.
There might even be an option to add a field that they can donate additional
Right.
funds
If they can't.
on the online.
We were trying
Right.
to look into that too.
If they can't attend
so
or.
that them to the idea of there will be an additional ask. Yeah.
Right.
So it's not just this ticket price.
Right.
Would you like to go ahead and do that right now, or
Yeah.
Always make it an opportunity.
an opportunity?
Opportunity.
Okay.
All right, so coming back to our evaluation, we've got 5 minutes both to evaluate today and the events that you're all going to now so fabulously execute. We got to go way back to the why, which is at the top of your page, right? And look at that and say, okay, long ago we decided that this event had certain goals. Let's try to remember what they are and how are we going to evaluate, decide if we've met them or not. First thing, and this I hammer on my students in grant writing class more about this, but in events it counts too. Your evaluation has to match your goals. Okay, if your goals were to, I'll go back to my own example, to recruit board members and fund the production, and you evaluate on, let's see, something like. We were able to bring school kids into the performances for free. Okay, well that's super cool, but it wasn't what you set out to do, right? If we wanted to bring school kids in for free, that should have been one of our goals. What we want to know is, did we recruit board members and did we fund the production? Am I making sense? I see you're got a little bit of a, okay. So what are your goals, and then how are you going to measure? What are some evaluation tools you can use?
Did we gain a new contact for a future volunteer,
Right.
board member?
Did we get a new relationship that we were seeking? I've heard a lot of talk about converting event attendees into donors, right? Maybe that's one of ours. So how are we going to measure that?
If they donated?
Yeah. There's going to have to be some point along in the year where they're going to be asked, say your event's in October, and you do a spring appeal, and you ask your new donors, your guests, your event guests to make a small annual gift. Obviously, you're going to, okay, we got 0 or we got 100%, right? That's your tool. What else?
It's a recurring event in terms of past results.
Yeah, in terms of?
In terms of, I think, a number of things, number of attendees, money raised.
Mm-hmm. Do we necessarily care about whether or not people come every year, or do we just want to know our total number of guests? What are your thoughts on that?
Care about, whether or not we're retaining them as a customers.
Okay.
And I think that would definitely depend on the type of event that you're doing. If
Right.
you're doing outreach or education events, then you don't necessarily want the same people to be showing
Right.
up at those events. You want them to be going further into the funnel of coming to a different
Mhm.
donor engagement kind of affair instead of just showing up to
Mhm.
education events time after time.
Yeah.
So,
So coming back to your example though, so if you do your History Makers Ball every year and you say we need to have 500 people a year, that's your goal. You don't care if it's the same 500, different 500 every year. Well, I mean, you do for long-term fundraising strategy, but evaluating the event itself, my goal was 500 people. I got 500 people.
I guess
Am I making sense here? Because events goals are part of a bigger development fundraising strategy that you also have to consider. So we're kind of doing a little bit of both here. Maybe, right?
I'm curious about a
Yeah.
one-liner maybe that you could throw out about event and mission-driven events in terms of the greater fundraising strategy. Could you just kind of do a couple lines?
I would say that it depends on whether or not you believe, meaning your organization, your board, your ED or development director, whoever, believes that fundraising is transactional or relational. If it's transactional, then all you care about is the bottom line. We had 500 people, we raised $500,000. That was our goal, good night, I'm going to Disneyland. If it's relational, your part A is, yes, we raised $500,000 and we had 500 people in. But we also gained a board member and gained 25 new annual donors and developed a great partnership with the people at the venue and a caterer, because these are all things we set out to do because we want to build relationships in addition to getting a check, into a deposit for $500,000 in the bank. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think
And-
for the most part, events are a transactional tactic towards building long-term relationships with donors.
Yeah.
Like a grant is a transactional tactic for sums of money perhaps to start a new program or something like that. But there's always a relationship possibility
Mhm.
in any of those things. And the bulk of money raised by nonprofits is raised by individual donors,
Mhm.
not by events. So,
Yeah, and that's why we're having this whole meeting. If you want a chance at keeping your event guests as donors, you've got to sell what you believe. If you just want people who come back every year, focus on having a great party and get a good band and make sure the food's awesome and you're done. Does that make sense?
There we go. Thank you.
it's a little why, I don't know when the last rush of road races, actually in the late 80s, not early 90s, like every organization in the world had a 5K, right? And it was great for marketing and great for awareness of the organization. It was lousy for real net money. And it didn't build donors per se, because
Yeah.
I ran in a lot of those, I just wanted to run. I wanted the t-shirt so I could say I ran, and I wouldn't have done it for an organization I didn't believe in, you know, to some extent. But I wasn't going to become a donor.
There is an evaluation of today that I would, you did? I would just love it if you guys would complete. This is the first time I've ever taught anything in this program, so thank you. So I need some feedback, and it always helps to hear good things if there are good things to share. Thanks for coming. You'll be getting a follow-up email from me with a link to, this will be available on our YouTube channel if you want to go back and listen to something you missed or a point that was made. And stay in touch. We'll be doing it again very soon. Thank you.